You would never guess it just by looking at him, but Mark the Titan Thompson was a living legend. At 81, Mark had lived a life most only read about, leading troops through 3 major wars, earning medals no one dared dream of, and witnessing horrors that would break the toughest men. But today, he wasn't a decorated war hero. He was just another passenger, standing in line at a crowded airport. "Excuse me, sir, your seat has been changed to 34B, the young gate agent said nonchalantly, barely glancing up from her screen. Mark's weathered fingers clenched around his boarding pass. His eyes briefly darted to the faint ribbon pin on his chest, a quiet mark of his unmatched service. "I was assigned to first class," he said, his voice calm, firm, like the one he used when leading his men in the heat of battle. The gate agent didn't even flinch. "There's been an adjustment," she said flatly, turning to the next passenger without an apology, a recognition of who he truly was. Mark stood there, unmoving for a moment. People were too busy to notice. To them, he was just another elderly man, probably a forgettable face in a long line. They had no idea who they were overlooking. But Mark, who had faced death on the front lines, didn't want to stir trouble. He wasn't one to make waves. He had seen worse than this. Slowly, with all the dignity he could muster, he walked down the narrow aisle of the plane. As he passed the luxurious first-class seats, he squeezed himself into 34B, a seat that felt too small, too tight, for a man who had given so much for this country. Beside him, a couple chatted about nothing important, unaware of the quiet giant sitting next to them. But then, something extraordinary happened. A tall man in an impeccably tailored suit walked down the aisle, flanked by 2 flight attendants. His presence immediately shifted the atmosphere. The hum of casual conversation died down. The man's voice rang out, clear and commanding. "Mr. Thompson?" Mark looked up, his eyes sharp as ever. "Yes. I'm Ethan Blackwell, CEO of Titan Airlines," the man said, his voice filled with sincerity. "I must apologize for the seating error." Mark, never one to seek attention, merely nodded. "It's fine." "No, sir," Ethan said, his voice low and filled with respect. He dropped to one knee, bringing himself down to Mark's level. "You belong in seat 1A, the seat that reflects who you truly are. We owe you more than this. Please, allow me to escort you to where you belong." The entire cabin was silent. It was as if the world itself was holding its breath. Mark remained still, but there was a quiet warmth in his chest. This wasn't just an apology. It was something deeper. An acknowledgment of the battles fought, of the sacrifice that only a few could truly understand. With slow, measured steps, Mark rose. The passengers around him watched in awe, some even standing in quiet respect as he made his way to the front of the plane. A man in the back gave a salute. A woman's phone camera clicked, but she was silent, her eyes wide with wonder. As Mark reached the front, the seat in 1A seemed vast, almost too large for the man who had spent his life in the cramped quarters of battle. He settled in, stretching his legs for the first time in hours. But it wasn't just the comfort of the seat that took him by surprise. It was the reverence in the air, the respect, the unspoken gratitude that flooded the cabin. The flight attendants immediately surrounded him, offering him a blanket, a cup of coffee, even a small American flag pin, which one of them slipped onto his tray with trembling hands. Before the plane took off, the captain's voice rang out over the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest on board today. Mr. Mark Thompson, a man who has served this nation with unparalleled courage, earning the highest honors. Let's all take a moment to show our gratitude." The entire cabin erupted in applause. But it wasn't the applause that mattered. It was the quiet understanding in the room, the respect that wasn't demanded but earned through years of sacrifice and service. Mark sat back, closing his eyes. This moment was about more than recognition. It was about the dignity that came from standing tall, even when others didn't see the weight of what you had carried. It was a reminder that true heroes don't ask for accolades. They simply live their truth, letting their actions speak louder than words ever could.